The theme for today's show is big. Yeah, it's a big speaker. The Klipsch LaScala AL6 is definitely on the large side. And it sounds in the best possible way like a big speaker. And I'm thrilled to be doing this review. Now Klipsch, you guys know Klipsch. It's an American company founded in 1946, which means next year they'll be 80 years old. And they were founded in Hope, Arkansas, where they design and build their heritage line of speakers, which includes this one, LaScala. I really have been looking forward to doing this review because it is a fully horn-loaded design. The tweeter, of course, mid-range, absolutely, but also a horn-loaded woofer. And that makes for a very, let's say, expressive sounding speaker. You hear subtlety, you hear nuance in the music that you never heard before, that I never heard before. It's not just that it can play loud. You look at a big speaker like this and you assume, oh yeah, this one can really crank. And it can, absolutely. But the thing is, you can hear the big dynamics, and you can hear very subtle dynamics. It plays well at late night listening levels. But even when you're listening to recordings that have loud instruments and quiet instruments at the same time, you can hear that relationship of dynamics within a recording, again, better than any other speaker I've had in this room. And another thing that I didn't see coming is that this speaker made me want to dance. Well, let's just say, not dance, jump around. Kind of like Neil Young, the way he jumps around on stage. That's what I was doing, especially to Neil Young's music. But any music that was rhythmic, I had this compulsion to stand up from my listening chair and move around and jump and dance to the music the best I could. It was communicating to me in ways that other speakers have not. This is part of my review. This is part of my report, is how the speaker makes me feel. I'm going to get into the details of the design soon enough, but I just want to tell you a little bit more about what I was experiencing, because I happened to be playing the Rolling Stones' Exile on Main Street. And I was playing it on CD, but I was also playing it on LP. I was going back and forth. Anyway, the thing that really jumped out on CD and on LP was Charlie Watts on drums. He's such a great drummer. He just fits in with the band so perfectly. You might even forget that there's this guy back there banging away, and he's just doing this great job propelling the band. And him combined with the original bass player, Bill Wyman, their rhythms are so good. And I could hear what was going on between Bill and Charlie through these speakers better than anything else I've ever had in this room. That was thrilling. And of course, Keith on guitar and Mick, it's just so good. It's just so loud. Now I was playing it loud, at least initially, like 90 dB peaks for a few minutes, a song or two. It's like, wow. And then I brought it down to 80 dB peaks, still pretty loud. And that's how I continue to listen to a lot of this album that I've been listening to for a very, very, very long time. So yeah, I know, skinny speakers or stand mounts with a killer subwoofer can do amazing things and blend really well, but not as well as this speaker could. It just fills a room in a very different way. And that's one of the reasons I'm so pumped up about telling you about my experiences with this speaker. The speakers, by the way, are big. I mentioned that before, right? Yes, they are big. They are 39 inches tall, 25 inches wide, but the big dimension is depth. They are 26 inches deep, and they are heavy, 205 pounds each. I got to interrupt the review for just a second to thank Sky-Fi Audio in Glen Rock, New Jersey. They are Klipsch heritage dealers, and they coordinated the delivery of these speakers to me. So a big thank you to Fernando, Ben, and Luciano for making it just a pleasure a total pleasure to work with you guys. So thanks again. And I think some of you guys probably noticed that this is a two-part design, two cabinets that is. The lower cabinet is for the woofer, top cabinet for the mid-range and tweeter. And yes, a wire connects those two parts together. And in the corners, as you're assembling the cabinets, there are these rubber donuts, one in each corner, to isolate the lower cabinet from the top cabinet. The two parts together, the whole thing weighs 205 pounds. It's, I think, the heaviest speaker I've ever had in this room. And unboxing it is definitely a two-person affair, two strong people. There's a lot of heavy lifting involved, and I had, lucky me, Ben and Luciano from Skyfi doing all that for me. So thanks again, guys. Let's dive back into the review, and I want to talk about the details of the design, starting with the tweeter. It has a Tractrix horn and a compression driver for the tweeter. Now, it's the same one as in the previous model, the AL5, except the new version has a phase plug on the tweeter, revised phase plug. The mid-range horn is where you see, because I'm showing you pictures, and hear the biggest differences of the new speaker versus the previous model, the AL5. The compression driver is now a 3-inch compression driver. The previous model had a 2-inch. And the horn is a Tractrix horn, and the older model had an exponential horn. That goes all the way, that horn goes all the way back to the 1963 LaScala. That's pretty interesting right there. Anyway, this new one has this Tractrix horn, which they promise offers wider dispersion, it's clearer sounding, it's an all-around better sounding horn. And that's the big difference in the AL6. But when we get to the horn-loaded woofer, there's also some very significant changes there. The new speaker has a 12-inch woofer. Previous LaScalas had 15-inch woofers. But this woofer has a 3-inch voice coil and a bigger magnet system than the old 15-inch driver had. In addition to that, the horn loading is different in that now it's augmented with bass ports. I'm showing you a cutaway of what all that looks like inside the speaker. So all that adds up to a very different sounding speaker. These speakers, by the way, are sold as matched pairs. I now present the complete specifications for the AL6. And note that you can get this speaker in 3 finishes. Well, your choice of one of the 3 finishes: walnut, American auburn, or black ash. Finishing on my samples of the auburn was really, really beautiful. A lot of stuff going on when you look deep into the grain. Beautifully done. It does come with a 10-year warranty, which is about double what most speaker companies offer on their passive speaker. So as for the amplifiers used over the course of this review, well, my primary amp was, of course, the Past Labs XA25, Class A, 25 watt, great amp, just that's a no-brainer. But I also experiment. I did use the Deckware Zen Trio 2.3 watts per channel. That was good, but I mean, it certainly had enough power because it played loud. You know, played easily 90 dB with that amplifier, but it wasn't dynamic. No, I wouldn't say that's going to be an ideal match. SIT3, it's very sweet, very luscious sounding amplifier on these speakers. That was nice. And I used my Dynaco ST70. It's an original from 1965, restored but not updated. Gorgeous, very tubey in the most beautiful way possible. I like that combination a lot. And the moment you've all been waiting for, the price. The Klipsch LaScala AL6 sells for $15,400 a pair, and the companion piece, and I didn't review it, but I'll tell you what it is. There's an active DSP crossover, 3-way crossover, that sells for $3,500. Now, as for the price of the speaker, yep, it's a lot of money. That is a lot of money. But when you look around in the market and see what $15,000 can buy from Bowers & Wilkins, or Focal, or Kef, or Sonus Faber, or JBL's big horns. Yeah, this one starts to look like an actual bargain because you get a lot more speaker for your money than you do from most other brands. And that is definitely noteworthy. So when people get a little weird about pricing, well, look what Klipsch offers compared to the competition. And of course, Wilson Audio and Magico, they don't have anything. They don't make any floor-standing speakers that aren't multiples of $15,400 a pair. Let's blast through some setup details. For once, here's a speaker that doesn't need to be pulled out into the room to sound its best. Now you can have it a foot away from the wall, behind it, or less. Not a problem. I do have one rather significant nitpick about this speaker. And that is, when you look at the back panel there, you see 18, yes, 18 binding posts. It is a bit much. Now, they're there for a reason, because you can either set up this speaker as a totally passive speaker, which is the way I used it, or with the active crossover and biamp it or triamp it, and that's what all those extra connectors are for. I get into a reggae mood every now and then, and I gotta say, Lee Scratch Perry is one of my all-time favorites. Some of it's not the best sound quality, some of it sounds really good, but anyway, what I was hearing in the bass, reggae has a lot of bass, but I was hearing detail and nuance and textures in the bottom end of these recordings that I have literally never heard before from any other speaker. I even put on headphones to see if I could hear it over headphones. No, I didn't hear it over headphones. Oh, I heard it, but I didn't feel it over headphones the way I did with the AL6. And I have to stress, again, because they're so big, you look at these speakers, you think it's all about loud. No, you can play them very quietly and feel and hear all that information coming out of the recordings. Yeah, people who live in apartments, and you want to be respectful of your neighbors, this speaker might actually surprise you, as big as it is, if you have room for it, how enjoyable it is when played not crazy loud. Now, as I was working on the AL6 review, I also had the Pure Audio Project Duet 15 Horn 1s on hand. So of course, I did the comparison, and I was playing this recording of, well, Cuban jazz. It's the Conga Kings. It's a lot of percussion and brass, and I'm comparing these two speakers. And the difference was scale. Yes, the LaScala sounded like bigger, more dynamically alive speakers. They sounded more of a piece. The blend between tweeter, mid-range, and woofer was better than the horn and the 15-inch woofer on the Horn 1. That was, yeah, they're not really that close. But again, the Pure Audio Project speaker is about half the price of this one. So, but anyway, the Pure Audio Project has an open baffle 15-inch woofer, and that leads to a sound that is more open and spacious, and let's say relaxed sounding compared to the AL6. But still, in the end, doing these comparisons, yes, the AL6 has more going on. There's more texture, more detail, more resolution, more range of dynamics. Yeah, but it's a more focused sound. I haven't really talked much about the AL6's imaging. Pretty spacious, good height, decent center fill, and depth. It has a sense of space going on behind the plane of the speaker. This horn speaker, unlike many other horns, doesn't just project sound forward of the plane of the speakers. It's happening on the plane of the speakers and receding back behind the speakers. And I really like it for that. In other words, this speaker does not shout, the AL6 that is, the AL6 does not shout at you. It's not a very aggressive sounding speaker. It's actually pretty chill most of the time, unless you crank the hell out of it. Listening fatigue is not really an issue. I listened a lot to this speaker, and no, it's very easy to listen to for hours and hours and hours. So people who have these impressions of horns from before where they are shouty and aggressive sounding speakers, that is not true for the AL6. But to finish my thoughts about the sound of the Pure Audio Project relative to the AL6, the Pure Audio Project is not as coherent sounding and it's not as transparent or dynamic as the AL6. Up to this point, I don't think I've mentioned the tweeter, because the sound of the tweeter is so well integrated with the mid-range, it just doesn't call attention to itself. It's clean, it's clear, but it's not as, let's say, a high resolution as a great ribbon tweeter, the kind that I heard on the Eminent Technology speakers I reviewed a couple of years ago. Those tweeters were phenomenal, and I was aware, like, wow, those tweeters are so great on the Eminent Technology. The tweeters on this one, on the AL6, they're just so, part of the sound, you don't think about them. I also wanted to compare the AL6 with the Klipsch OJAS speaker that is now one of my reference speakers. And that one, now it's a much smaller speaker. It's basically a stand mount speaker. But in terms of its fullness, it actually held up pretty well in comparison to the AL6. It sounded as full, but it was nowhere as clear sounding, as immediate sounding, the way it separates instruments. The AL6 separates each individual instrument in a recording far better than the Klipsch OJAS speaker does. In terms of dynamics, yes, the AL6 is more dynamic. There's more gradations to each level of dynamics of each instrument in the mix. You just hear that more clearly through the AL6. The Klipsch OJAS speaker is no slouch in that regard, but it does sound smaller. It can't move the air the way the AL6 does. The AL6, here's a statement, tells the truth about what's going on in a recording to an extraordinary degree that the Klipsch OJAS speaker does, but at a much lower level. It can't keep up in quite the same way. But it is a bit more than half the price of the AL6. I was playing Days of Future Past, Nights of White Satin, and I played this recording hundreds of times over the years, and here I am listening to it over the AL6, and I'm hearing a very different version of what I thought this music was. It just opened up. The orchestral parts made more sense relative to the band. The vocals sounded so human and present. This is something I haven't stressed enough about the AL6 sound, is its mid-range is so gorgeous, so natural sounding. The tonality of this speaker is exceptional, absolutely exceptional. Is it as high res as a great electrostatic speaker? No, it can't do that. But electrostatic speakers can't keep up bass-wise or dynamic-wise with the AL6. Does it sound as open, as spacious as a Magnepan, any dipole speaker? No, dipole speakers are more spacious. Depth, width, height, everything is bigger in a great dipole speaker than the AL6. But the AL6 wins when it comes in terms of dynamic life. The energy of the music itself, of the instruments, of the singers, comes through more completely through the AL6 than other types of speakers I've reviewed. At this point, I want to squeeze in a little bit of extra time to talk about the way the AL6 can image. It throws a wide sound stage. It actually has a nice sense of height, can image higher than the height of the speakers, and there's a good sense of depth of instruments behind the plane of the speakers themselves. Now, the one area that comes up a bit short is image focus. It's not as, let's say, tightly delineated as other speakers that have come through this room. If you're looking for hyper resolution in focus, this speaker, it's not going to give it to you. Let's slip into, so Steve, what do you really think of the Klipsch LaScala AL6 fully loaded, fully horn-loaded speaker? I think you know what I'm going to say. It's unlike anything else I've ever heard, even compared to other horn speakers, even compared to other Klipsch speakers I've had in this room, because I had a set of Cornwall 4s in my room for a long time, for 3 years. And I still think about those speakers, and I still miss those speakers because they did some of what this speaker does. But this speaker, the AL6, does more of it in terms of scale, of truth, of hearing into the mix better than my memories of the Cornwall 4s. So yeah, I am head over heels smitten with the sound of this speaker. And with that, I can move right into, yes, you know it, you love it, the Audiophiliac viewer system of the day. Matthias lives in Germany, and he sent in these very tasty pictures. His turntable is a Riga RP8 with a Hanna ML cartridge. The amplifier is a Luxman SQ-N150. The DAC, Holo Audio Cyan 2. Streamer is a SOTM SMS200 Neo with the linear power supply. Transport Shanling ET3. The speakers, they are the stars of the show. They are DIY, made from the Jean Haraga's Le Petit design, and the cables are all DIY. Thank you, Matthias. Hey guys, thank you. Thank you for sticking around. We are back, and I just want to make an announcement. You probably know where I'm going. Well, first of all, thank you for sticking this far into the video. But I want to let you know that on my Patreon, I am making exclusive content, exclusive videos that are never shown here on YouTube or anywhere else. And that's for my paying customers on my Patreon. So you could join for a couple of bucks a month, up to $50 or even $100 a month. And at the top 2 tiers, you and I will have a conversation every month at the beginning of the month. And I thoroughly enjoy those conversations. So consider that. And with that, I can say my work here is at last complete. Thank you again for watching. And I really do hope to see you back here again very, very soon. Bye-bye.